I've had the pleasure of facilitating this part a couple of times, and like I said, I learn every single time because everybody brings a little bit different perspective to what they're talking about, and I find that to be very, very fascinating, very, very interesting. So I'm going to go ahead. In your package, you have the full biographies of each of our panelists, and let me tell you, this is a wonderful panel to learn from. Mary really hit it out of the park, being able to pull this group together. I'm going to read very briefly just a synopsis of each bio so you do have an understanding of who these wonderful folks are. And then I'll read through each of them, and then we'll turn it over and we'll go through each of their comments, and then for whatever time we have available, we'll open it up for questions, and then we'll move on to our next part. Charlie Amato is the chairman and co-founder of SWBC. It's a diversified financial services company, and he has more than 38 years of experience in all aspects of insurance, options, underwriting, and product development. Mr. Amato is known in the business community for his innovative relationship-building approach. He's currently serving a second term as a regent for Texas State University System, as vice chairman of the Texas Business Leadership Council, where I actually know Charlie in that context, in that world. He's also a member of the Business and Community Advisory Council for the Federal Reserve Bank in Dallas. Mr. Amato has received numerous recognitions for his contributions to the financial services industry and his community. So wonderful that Charlie is here, and we appreciate you doing so. Ms. Carol Scott is the owner and president, and I apologize if I say this right. Kylo. Thank you, Carol. Kylo Communication Studio, a Corpus Christi-based public relations firm. She's worked as a sole practitioner and small agency owner since 1995, following positions with the American Heart Association and the Corpus Christi Regional Transportation Authority. Nice combination of health and transportation. I actually share a passion for both of those with you. Mrs. Scott was elected to the Del Mar College Board of Regents in November 2014 and was recently appointed to the Board of Community College Association of Texas Trustees, where she serves on the strategic planning and legislative committees. Previously, she served 8 years on the Corpus Christi Independent School District Board of Trustees, including 3 terms as president of the board. And for those of you who have been involved in school districts, I don't think there's a tougher position in any community than being the school board president. So thank you for that service. She's past president of the Texas Public Relations Association and past chairman of the Public Relations Foundation of Texas. She has previously served in leadership positions for Leadership Corpus Christi, the League of Women Voters, Corpus Christi Arts Council, the Corpus Christi Education Foundation, and several other boards and commissions. So you can see we've got people who are really committed. Mike Reeser is Chancellor of Texas State Technical College, leading the only state-supported technical college system in Texas. Under Mike's leadership, TSTC has become well known as an innovator in higher education, with the most noteworthy being the return value funding formula and outcomes-based state funding approach. And once again, that is very popular with the coordinating board, and we can't tell you how much we appreciate that. Prior to being appointed chancellor in 2010, Mr. Reeser served TSTC in various roles, including chief financial officer of the system, college president, vice president, and dean of instruction. In the earlier portion of his career, Mr. Reeser was a banker and served in executive and management roles in Waco and in Houston. So once again, like I said, we've got an amazing panel, and I'm so grateful and pleased that each of you are here, and really look forward to your comments. So let's give them all a warm welcome, and I'll turn the program over to Charlie. So welcome to all of you. Thank you for being here.
Thank you. It's great to be here today, and I'm honored to be here today. As he told you, I'm on my second term as a Board of Regent, and my first term, Dora kind of helped train me. I was a rookie regent, and because of my financial service background, they immediately made me chair the finance chair of the Board of Regents, and it was so complicated. Academia is so different than corporate America, and I haven't worked in an accounting department in over 35 years. I don't even go to my accounting department. They come to me and they brief me and they summarize everything, but when I had to learn and digest all the budgets of the various schools, we have 4 four-year schools and 3 two-year schools, and they hand you a financial statements thick as a Webster's dictionary, it scared the living heck out of me. And but you really have to dig down and learn the operations and the accountings of all the universities, because they're all, even though they're in the same system, they're not all similar and they're different. So whenever you make recommendations on, well, when you start to build buildings or athletic departments or whatever, you've got to dig down really deep and understand also the personalities of the various schools, even though we're in the same system. But, you know, they force feed you. You learn the terminology, and Roland Smith, our CFO, taught me a lot. And then all the internal auditors, as Alan can tell you, now he chairs our finance committee, but all their internal auditors report to you. And that's good and that's bad, because internal audit, you come up with a lot of situations on various campuses that you never imagined that could happen in the world of academia. And there's wrongdoing, there's not everything's pleasant, and you're even being challenged sometime not to send the same auditors back to those campuses, which you have to overrule because they work for you, not the presidents. And so you have to make unpopular decisions. One of the biggest things that I was attracted to as a regent is, many of you know, there's a lot of state and national politics to go with funding. And fortunately, my firm, because of all the regulations and financial services, I've known a lot of elected officials, not only in the state of Texas, but in Washington, D.C. So we're on first name basis with a lot of, up until recently, I was just elected to the Fed board, so I can't even endorse beginning of January, I can't even endorse anyone anymore. I can't cut a political check anymore. I've got to be neutral. And that's what you should be, even though in those days when I did, I was always good at working both sides of the aisle. If I had a fundraiser in my home for one individual of one party, I would balance it by having a fundraiser for an individual in another party, because you don't need to make enemies when you're trying to raise funds. And one of the best things we ever did in our system, we hired Brian McCall, who was in the legislature for 20 years, well-respected, first-name basis with all the elected officials. And prior to Brian there, and Dora can tell you, we had some of our funding cut back because there were some political issues between the system office and the Hill. So we had to rebuild those relationships, and I'm better at that than accounting. And so, and with Brian, it made our job very easy. And so we keep all our, we go to the Hill once a year. We work the Hill as a Board of Regents, and we also, the chair and the vice chair goes to Washington, D.C. once a year, and we work that situation, which is even more political and more complicated. But we've been successful in increasing our funding on the state level and the federal level. With the rise of cost of academia today, we're all monitored at the way we raise our tuitions. It's a very sensitive subject. We discuss those in detail, and we take that very seriously. So part of our job as regents, not only to maintain a fair tuition fee, but get all the funding we can get so we can hold down the fees. And another one of our responsibilities as a regent, I'm fortunate to live in San Antonio where a lot of large corporations are. For instance, Valero Energy's there, but they hire a lot of Lamar University engineering graduates in Beaumont. So with our relationships, I'm able, and the other regents are able to go in and get, say, Valero to give a 7-figure donation to Lamar, and we just got another corporation that just give a big donation to Texas State and San Marcos. All of that helps, and it pays for scholarships. Our system, we're big on first-generation college graduates. We're very passionate about that. I'm a first-generation college graduate. My grandparents were from Italy. My mother and father went to the 8th grade. But they saw to it that all 4 of us kids got our college education, and I know how it's affected my life. I can't imagine how I would be without a college education. I've gotten real expensive living habits now, and it's helped a lot. So our primary job is to make our graduates job ready. We have to listen to them. We have to mentor them. We have to be there for them in all cases. A lot of people, many regions go in there because it's a political appointment and they don't approach it, I think, in the correct way. You're there to serve the students. You're not there to serve yourself. You're there to, as an example, I went to Sam Houston State, so you have to learn as a regent in the Texas State University system, you can't be emotional about your school. My first term of 6 years, I didn't even wear an orange tie. You know, I wanted to be neutral, totally neutral. And because you're representing all the schools, not your school, not the one you're emotionally attached to. And hopefully it serves you well. Again, we live in a different world than we used to live in. We have to be concerned for the students' safety. So regents like it, we have to dig down in the alert program. I'm on a board of a Catholic university in San Antonio also, and we had a situation 2 weeks ago when I was in India. I got an alert that there was somebody carrying a weapon on campus. So you have to look at those policies and procedures to protect your students at all costs. Then in our last board meeting last week, we had to discuss open carry. We met a lot that's coming into effect in January, in effect. So we met with our students and we listened to our students. We wanted their opinion and we listened to our university presidents. The one thing you shouldn't do as a regent, he mentioned it earlier, you don't get in the daily operations of running the university. But you listen to your presidents, you let the chancellor's office and the presidents run the universities, and you're there to monitor the policies and make sure everything's going properly and support the chancellor and the presidents. And but you just make sure everything is going in the right path. And again, you don't forget why you were appointed. You're there, and I refer to our customers, since I'm a sales and marketing guy, I mean our students as customers. They're our customers. That's who we're there to represent. We're not there to build our own priorities as a board of regents. That's not why we're there. I just think that, again, we want these kids to be able to go out and get a high-paying job, or if they want to continue their education, they have to be academically prepared, and that's our responsibility so they can get to that next level. And if we don't do that, we're failing these students. And I'm passionate for first generation. Most of our kids tell me where they came from and their background. And that's why that I'm very active, and I want to be very active of raising more scholarship money for these kids to make sure they don't come out with a lot of student debt. That makes me nervous. Fortunately, my parents dug down and I didn't have any student debt when I graduated, which made my life a lot easier. And I guess last but not least is don't talk to the media as a regent. That's not your job to communicate with the media. They call me all the time. One thing she didn't say, I'm one of the Spurs investors, and these sports guys call me constantly. And but when we meet as an organization, we agree we have an elevator comment to make, and we keep it that way. But your job as a regent is not to communicate to the media. Stay away from them. Don't return the calls. Let the system office communicate with them, and the university presidents communicate with them, and stay out of the public eye. Just do your job, and that's all I've got to say. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Oh, I get to be next.
You're next.
Well, I just want to tell Bobby that he failed in his the primary act of a facilitator. You're supposed to under-promise, and then we over-deliver. He really kind of over-promised the greatness
Shows my
of
confidence.
I, as introduced, am a new regent in the last year to Del Mar College in Corpus Christi. But it is a college that I have a long history with through both community involvement, but through very personal circumstances as well. I did not go to Del Mar College. I've taken a couple of photography and community ed classes, those kinds of things there. But my mother, when I was in first grade, drove back and forth from our little town in Bishop, Texas. My sister was is dyslexic, and so she had to have special education training when she was in elementary school, and the only teacher was 45 miles away in Corpus Christi. So Mom started driving back and forth to take my sister to a special ed teacher for reading disabilities in Corpus Christi. And Mom decided to go back to school. So she started at Del Mar College and went 3 semesters there, ultimately got her bachelor's and master's in special education, and then taught school herself for a number of years. My dad was a one-semester college guy. He had to go to work, and my mom had gone at that point to business school, and so when she went back to start her college education and changed the course of our family's life by pursuing higher education, 3 of my 4 siblings are all college graduates and some with master's degrees and specialty degrees as well. So I remember Del Mar Viking textbooks on my dining room table while Mom was studying, and we started eating off of TV trays when Mom went back to school because the dining room table was her desk. So I have a long history with Del Mar College. My approach to leadership as a regent really centers around some of the Carver governance models, and a lot of you have attended Carver governance training in one way, shape, or form, and maybe be instituting it in your universities or in your community colleges. But the opportunity to look at governance versus management kinds of roles, to me, is very distinctive. And so and I think Mike's going to talk a lot about this, and so I'm not going to delve too much into his piece. But thinking about what goals, objectives, what ends do you want your college to meet? How are you going to measure success? And then allowing your professional staff to determine how they're going to get there. We are not there as regents or trustees to tell our employees how to do their job. We're there to communicate goals and expectations and parameters within which they do their job, but we're not there to tell them how to do their job. And if you're getting into those how questions, then you either have the wrong CEO, or perhaps you need to change your perspective, because if it's a good CEO and the rest of your regents are agreeing that that you have a good CEO, then you probably need to start changing your perspective. Because when you're getting into how questions, again, it's a really good indication that you may be delving into management. I want to talk a little bit about your role as a regent or trustee versus roles that you have in other ways, shapes, or form. We have a number of regents, and all of us do, who are either alumni of the university, maybe you're a parent or a grandparent of a student who's going to that college or university, who are business owners or business leaders, and may even come back and represent folks who have contracts for training or who have a vested interest. Perhaps real estate, perhaps construction. You're going to have a number of hats that you wear coming into your regent's role, and that's very beneficial to the university or to the college. It's very beneficial for them to have folks sitting on their governing board who have a wide span of awareness about what's happening in that community. But what is not helpful is when you wear that hat sitting at the board table. The hat that you're wearing sitting at the board table is the hat of a regent or a trustee. It is not the hat of a parent. It's not the hat of a volunteer. It's not the hat of a business owner or a taxpayer or any of those other roles. It is the hat of a regent. And that regent or trustee hat is one that requires you to, and Charlie put it very eloquently, to look at the students, look at the efficient and effective use of community resources or taxpayer dollars, and look at what is fair to your employees and what is moving the higher education community forward in your community. And so that's the role of a regent. And again, if you find yourself responding to issues from a hat other than a regent hat, then you probably need to stop and take a breath and say, what can I do to change my perspective on this? Again, it's good to be informed, and all of us are going to bring those experiences to the table and help inform our decisions. But you cannot make a decision based on a hat other than your regent hat, is probably the best way to talk about it from my perspective. I also want to talk a little bit about the concept of the rogue regent, and we've all been to seminars, and we've all had those conversations about the rogue regent, and I am not. There are folks out there who are always going to see things from a different framework, come into the conversation from a different perspective, and so I try to respect that perspective, and I try to not immediately react based on my personality differences or my like or dislike for another regent. But so listen and see if there are nuggets of truth that are maybe just being delivered very badly. but are there nuggets of truth? Are there issues that need to be dealt with? But from the next perspective, I think that after you get past that, and if you are dealing respectfully with the issues that are being brought up, then as a board, as a group, you're going to have to come to some decision about policy on how to deal with a rogue regent. And so that term in and of itself has almost gotten so laden with all kinds of definitions, but it's someone who is working in contrary to the majority or to the stated preferences of the board and to the voted preferences of the board. So find ways to perhaps restate in positive terms what the board has already decided on. Support your chair in potentially sanctioning or censuring or reprimanding a board member who continues to work contrary to the voted mission. And if you've got a board member who just continues to, as an elected official or as an appointed official, continues to push their agenda, sometimes there's nothing you can do about that. And you almost have to decide how much energy are we going to spend on one person's argument. The other 6 or 8 or 10 of us are going to continue on the path and work. We can't stop what that person's saying, but we're going to continue on a positive path and continue to support the CEO in dealing with that individual. Because the reality is, we can't change someone else's beliefs or behaviors. We can try to moderate that in a public setting, but we've all seen attempts to legislate behavior and legislate morality and legislate people's beliefs, and that doesn't work in any way, shape, or form in any size legislative body. I will challenge you, and this is probably one of the most difficult things that I'll say. If you find yourself consistently on the downside of the 1 to 5 or the 1 to 6 or the 1 to 8 vote, then perhaps you need to look at the man in the mirror, to quote Michael Jackson, and see what it is about your argument, see what it is about the way you're delivering your position, that perhaps you need to get some professional coaching or counseling, not counseling, but professional coaching with your CEO, maybe counseling, I'm not sure. And find a way to, because if you are the rogue regent or trustee, then perhaps you need to find a way to make your arguments better heard. And I'm not going to say your arguments aren't valid, and from your perspective, obviously they are, or you wouldn't continue to bring them up. But find a way to talk with some fellow regents, perhaps with your CEO, to talk about how to more effectively communicate your position and to determine why there's a consistency for everyone else to vote one direction and you're espousing something else. It's a challenging thing to look, but that personal development piece, I think, is very, very important. Carrying on that same theme, I don't believe that every board decision has to be a unanimous vote. So this is not about we all have to get along and we all have to pretend in public that we get along, or that we all have to put on some face, or that we rubber stamp, or that, quite frankly, we're all necessarily best friends. There's a number of regents that I don't talk with outside of our regent meetings. There are some that I do, that I see at different social events, or perhaps even break bread from time to time. But being a productive, respectful regent does not mean that we all have to be best friends all the time. And so there's a real balance between those concepts of we're all one big happy family versus are we a productive body that is looking at important issues and is moving the college or the university forward. So I'm not saying that we all have to be best friends all the time, but and in fact, that's where some of the best conversation can happen, is when we actually had a situation in talking about budget and just coming from a new perspective, from a public education perspective, as well as other community boards and issues. I was asking some questions during our budget process this year, and had a conversation with the president after the meeting, and I said, I'm sorry if I took up too much time. I was really trying to understand the process and understand the buckets and the policies and how these things are done. He said, no, that's great conversation, because part of what a new regent can bring to that conversation is a new set of eyes. Other folks have asked a question. We've got some regents who've been on the board, upwards in their teens and 20 years. And so some of these processes are just kind of rote for them at this point. So it's okay to ask those rookie questions, and those questions for understanding and to make sure that you're looking at things from a different perspective. So again, it's not about sitting quiet either and looking to others and trying to play nice all the time. Ask your challenging questions. Ask the questions that are going to look at important issues, but do it in such a way that is respectful and is about moving the conversation forward. There's another note here. Yep. So in doing that, one of the hows for me is in being prepared. So as a regent, I'm not saying how the community college does their job, but as a regent, how do you do your job? One is that you're prepared and that you understand the policies. If you have factual or understanding kind of questions, sometimes you can get those answered very quickly in advance of the meeting. I will email our CEO and potentially the CFO or someone else if I have a quick question about what's in the packet that I know everybody else knows, and I'll just say, if you can cover this in your comments, great. If not, here's a question I'm going to ask because I don't understand this. So I'll give them a heads up. I don't want to play gotcha. That's not my role either, is to play gotcha with staff. But I do ask questions about policy and about systemic issues and about programmatic issues and look for the precedent that we're setting. Those are the kinds of conversations to have it at the board level. So again, balancing that. The last couple of things is my role as a regent, and I tried to use this role when I was a public school board member as well, is to clear the pathway so that folks like my college president, folks like Mike, can do their job with as little political fray in the road as possible. I don't want my college president to have to worry about the politics of a decision. I want him or her to be able to make a decision and to recommend things to the board based on their educational leadership, based on the thought leadership that they and their staff and faculty are bringing to the table. And I need to clear the political pathway. What that means is by being a connector, by helping folks understand the different perspectives that folks may be looking at decisions we make, that I'm helping communicate that out in the public. I'm helping bring perspective to the table in making those decisions, but ultimately it is about helping them do their job the best they can. Lastly, I'm a firm believer in professional development. Had this conversation with Scott over breakfast. In my profession, I have done a lot of work in professional development for the public relations field, both in Texas and nationwide. And so I believe in professional development seminars like this. One of the best things I'm going to suggest that you do is to look at organizations like the Community College Association of Texas Trustees, because that is an opportunity for us to learn from each other, to network, and to find a way to coordinate our efforts both legislatively and in other policy areas. So look for continued ways to learn. None of us know everything. One of the Carver tenets is that there is never there's never a way that I, as a regent, am going to know or be able to understand or know all that he knows and all that his faculty and staff are doing every day. So that's why we can't prescribe to them how to do their job. What we can do is understand how we do our job better, and those are the kinds of things that you can learn in professional development. So. One last thing. I wanted to introduce one of my fellow regents. Gabe Rivas came in the room, and so, Gabe, nice to see you.
Thanks, Carol. That's really good. You know, one of the great things about going last is about half of my stuff has already been taken care of, so I don't have to go through it. You know, I'm a Texas Aggie, and there's two kinds of Texas Aggies. There are the urbane, sophisticated, intelligent, and nuanced Aggies, like Bobby. Yeah, right. And then there are those who perpetuate the stereotypes, like me. The sorts who couldn't catch a clue if you put it on the billboard. So here I am again, being the guy who represents the CEOs of Texas, saying to you, the trustees, here's how we'd really like you to do your job. So I'll get it. A lot of it's already been covered really well. This panel's been really good this year. You know, you have your big three. The first is protect the institution. You know, focus on things like internal audit, risk management, crisis response, fiscal responsibility, all those sorts of things. Be sure you focus on that. Job number two, select and support your CEO. Your CEO is your professional manager. That she or he, you hired them to run the college. Please don't try to run the college. Instead, govern. And I'll get into some of that if I have time at the end. And then finally, and this is really an important one, make sure the board manages itself. Because every minute your CEO spends managing the board members is another minute lost in terms of managing the college that you serve and fulfilling the obligations to those students. So as you join the board, or if you're already on one, try to create an atmosphere in which you know consistently that the board is not going to be one of the things the CEO has to manage all the time. And so those are your big three. But then I have some really quick tips. Here's some. Higher ed is going to go through seismic shifts in the next 10 years. Our business model is wavering. And as a regent or a trustee, you're going to have the courage to join your CEO in making some tough decisions. Number two, be strategic. Act as a unit. Don't have separate agendas. If you have a point of view about a particular item and your fellow board members couldn't articulate what your point of view is, you may have a separate agenda. So, select a single voice for the board. We already talked about that. The press will love to divide you. So if you don't adopt the practice of having a single voice, they will successfully do that in the media. Spend time to get to know each other. I mean, you'll govern better if you understand each other's point of view. It reduces the chances for separate agendas. Create a rapport with the CEO that encourages her or him to bring the whole story to you. If your CEO isn't fearless about sharing the bad news and the good, then that rapport isn't where it needs to be yet. Do a real annual review of your CEO every year. And don't forget this. Colleges and universities have a radically different internal culture than the business that you run every day. It is not like a for-profit or commercial concern. It's like a colony of artists. Can you imagine that? Okay, and it prides itself in doing things traditional ways, which is why we wear those funny dresses at commencement. The ones that look like the Harry Potter robes. Yeah. Here's another, just a practical one. Fund accounting is really different. And don't think that you can take your normal commercial style accounting understandings into a fund accounting discussion and really get it. And it takes a lot of people a long time to shift gears into fund accounting speak. So watch out for that. Take the time. Learn the jargon. Don't be afraid, particularly early on, to go, excuse me, what is HEAF? Yeah, excuse me, what are TRBs? Don't be afraid to say that. I'll tell you what we do for our regents is we actually publish a glossary with all of the acronyms in it, so that they can flip in the back of their board book without having to embarrass themselves and ask what it is. Like Carol said, read and understand your board material before you get to the meeting. You're being derelict if you don't. We're counting on you to have actually read that stuff. And oftentimes our presentations are based on that assumption that you've actually done that. And then some practical advice, and this is stuff that I've gotten from other CFOs. You're probably going to be a better trustee or regent if you listen more than you talk. If you ask as opposed to tell. And if it ain't broke, don't fix it. There's no need to dive into stuff that is already working well. And so here's, how much time do I have?
Good.
I'm doing okay. Okay, let me give you some examples. One of the biggest sins boards can do is micromanage. Let me give you some examples of what that might look like. And good pedagogy means I show you, I don't tell you. So here's some examples. These are actual questions that I've collected from fellow CEOs. Board members asking questions like, how many gallons of gas do we use in our police cars? Okay? Now think of the thousands of dollars a minute you're burning during a board meeting, and you're asking questions like that. Okay, here's what governance would sound like. Tell me about our energy management policies. Do we attempt to be green? How is our 5-year trend in energy use? Now, those would be governing questions. Micromanaging would be, what's our kilowatt hour rate? Or do we have low flush toilets? These are actual questions, by the way. These are literals. Here's another one. What do we pay our teachers? Now, or who got a raise this year? Or, this is a really good, this is an actual one. Can my brother-in-law get a job here?
Yeah, absolutely not.
Okay. How about this instead? Here's governance as an example. Do we have a compensation policy that is comprehensive, and how is it administered? What are the indicators that were on our plan? Now that would be governance in terms of compensation. Are you satisfied with our employee turnover rate? If you're not, what are your plans for making it better? Those are examples of governing questions. Some others would be, this is one, what's our enrollment in the XYZ program? Now, enrollment is crucial to a lot of people. I mean, it's a driver of your revenues, but probably a more important question might be something like this. What are our growth markets in the future, and how will we sell into those new segments? Are you happy with our program mix? If not, what could we do better? Or how do we assess the viability of our programs? Those might be more strategic and governing type questions as opposed to how many recruiters do we have and what high schools are they calling on? So in terms of the overall situation on the board, it's been said by Charlie and it's been said by Carol and by us, Please govern and don't manage. Create an atmosphere your CEO feels partnership with you. Don't dive in to the day-to-day details. Here's a danger sign. If you have an office on campus,
Yeah.
that's a danger sign. If you do and you spend more than 1 or 2 days a month in it, that's a real danger sign. And then finally, here's 3 tips. During board meetings, in order to maintain your governance position, ask yourself these 3 things. CEO, are you spending your time on only the things that a CEO can do? And if not, why? And what can the board do to help you fix it? Number 2, how does this matter before us contribute to student success, which Carol talked about and Charlie talked about? And then finally, what can the board do? And just as importantly, what can we stop doing that will help this institution realize its mission? So, the role of a regent or a trustee is important to the organization, but it's a particular role that can be played well. In the long run, if you want your college to do really, really well, here's what I will leave as a final comment. You have to have a phenomenal CEO. There are phenomenal CEOs in Texas. Some of them are sitting in this room right now. If you want one of those, you have to be a phenomenal board. Because we aren't going to work for those who aren't. We know who you are and who you aren't. And if you want the good ones so that your college can reach its full potential, be a great board. And that's what I have.
Great. Good job.